Thank you for watching this recording of our presentation, No Step is Too Small, Course Reports as a Strategy to Advance OER at Your Institution. We represent faculty from Mount San Antonio College, or as we call it, Mount SAC. Mount SAC is a community college located in Los Angeles County, specifically in Walnut, California, which is to the south of the San Gabriel Mountains and about a 40-minute drive from downtown Los Angeles. Mount SAC is one of the largest of California's 115 community colleges, with a total student enrollment of about 35,000 students. And more than half of our students identify as Latino, and a little more than half are first-generation college students. So to give you some context, I think it's also helpful to share that OER have not yet been really widely adopted or institutionalized at our campus. Certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, faculty awareness and adoption has been increasing incrementally. And we're hoping that with new grant funding available and larger equity initiatives taking place, that OER literacy and adoption will become more commonplace on our campus. So if you're in a similar position, you are in good company. I wanted to start us off with a land acknowledgement. Mount SAC is located on Tongva lands and territories. They are the traditional caretakers of Tobangar, which includes the Los Angeles Basin and the South Channel Islands, what we now call home, and where Mount SAC is geographically located. The Tongva share their lands with the Kich, Achachaman, Tatavian, Serrano, and Cahuilan people. And the native village that was once located in Walnut was called Pimukanga. Much respect to the Hunukvitam, Ahihiron, and Iohinkem, past, present, and emerging. So some quick introductions. My name is Cristina Springfield. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a librarian and member of the Library Initiative for Equitable and Affordable Learning, also known as LILE, which is an OER committee work group based out of the Mount SAC Library. And LILE works to promote the adoption of OER and other affordable learning solutions across campus. LILE was formalized in 2020, so fairly recently, after many years of library-led activities and programs supporting OER and other kinds of affordable learning materials issues on campus.
So I am Monika Chavez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am also a librarian and a member of LILE at Mount SAC.
And our presentation will also feature clips from an interview with one of the faculty members that participated in this project. Ellen Caldwell is a faculty member at Mount SAC. She is an LA-born and based art historian, writer, and professor, and also a long-standing adopter and advocate, both at Mount SAC and within the larger discipline of art history. So we're happy to have her voice join ours. Our takeaways for you today in this presentation are to be able to describe what a course report is and to think about how it can play a piece in your larger OER adoption strategy at your institution. The QR code on the slide here should take you to a research guide page where you can access and download both the presentation slides as well as other resources that we mentioned during the presentation.
So the first question that comes up is, what is a course report? So course reports are a list of open educational resources that can be used in a course. Not only this, it also addresses gaps between available OER and what is listed in the course outline of record. And that's particularly important, is that we have the course reports align with the course outlines of record. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a course report. So the first part is the course ID and title of course. So this one is from Ellen Caldwell, who is you'll see video of later in this presentation. But it's Art History 3, History of Women and Gender in Art. And then there's the list of OER, so all the different sources that Ellen was able to pull from. And then next one, please. After that, this is just part of it, but it's the outline. So Ellen aligned this one with the topical section of the course outline of record. Other people could have chosen to do it on a weekly basis, where you say, like, if you usually teach week 1, you teach XYZ topics. That was also a possibility. But the main thing is we wanted to make sure that the OER aligned with what is required of the instructors of this particular course. Next slide, please. And then additionally, there is a gap analysis. So we had each instructor talk about what was not available for that particular course, which Cristina will talk more about later. And then we also talked about their particular experience, or we had them write on their particular experience, so that we could have an understanding of what it is that went well, and then maybe other things that we could work on, or maybe, help with just future planning for Mount SAC. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So why did we decide on course reports? So, one of the reasons we did it was because when searching for potential projects, Cristina came across a course report from Sacramento City College. And we liked it because it offered a structured process that explicitly links the selection of OER with the course outline of record. Additionally, it's more rigorous than a textbook review, but it's less intimidating than a full-on adoption of OER. So while, of course, we do want instructors to adopt OER, we recognize that this requirement may keep instructors from working with us. Additionally, we wanted there to be a product created in the end.
Felt like it targeted faculty even more specifically to kind of meet us where our needs are. And I think that because the research that the course reports enabled me to do really provided support that was both financial and then also like library and OER guidance to do research that I already wanted to do. And it was research that I have done for other classes, and I know how much time that takes, and it's usually pretty hard to fit in when I'm also trying to develop a class. So trying to figure out what exists in the OER world, and then where the gaps are and how to do all of that feels really daunting when you're just planning a course. And so being able to do that as this separate project where I had this support, and again, having it be both this financial support, but also I felt really supported by the team on Lyle and everything. So having that helped to make it feel possible.
Just to mention from the application and rubric, these, of course, were aligned, and in the application, and which was required in the rubric, which we sent to faculty as well, so they could see how we were grading these applications. We did impact, we did scalability, but we also did innovation, creativity, quality of proposal. We did do potential course savings as well. We tried to keep it a balance of, how much impact this will have on students, alongside different criteria, simply because of the fact that there are some departments that are much smaller, and we wanted to make sure that they still had a chance of getting these grants, because it's not always about how many students it will impact. It can be specific areas that have not really had too much headway in OER. Okay. And this is our agreement, which we think is a very important component of our project, is just making sure that they know what's required of them, and then when it is required, especially because due to the Title V grant that we have, we were able to give a $1,000 grant to each one of the awardees for each of the course reports that they completed. So we just have requirements, deliverables, and then compensation, and then agreement. Okay, so we started this. So we did some more pre-work around May and June, and then for launching this, we started in July 2021, where we opened the application. And then in early August 2021, we reviewed the application and notified the awardees. We also had a kickoff meeting with the awardees, which we recorded so that people in the future could watch. We had a self-paced course, and then of course we had turn in the course reports. We required them to report to their department or present to their department, and then they were responsible for turning in their timesheets to Title V to make sure that they got the money.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about results. So we opened up our application not knowing how many applicants might be interested. We ended up only getting 8. 8 faculty applied for a total of 10 courses that they wanted to take a look and do the analysis for. So the first step after attending the meeting with us, Lyle, was for them to complete an asynchronous OER basics course. We really wanted to make sure that everyone coming into the process all had a foundational knowledge about what OER is and what Creative Commons licenses are, just in case the faculty member that was participating didn't have a background in OER. So that was really important that we be able to integrate those that were new to this. So having the asynchronous course proved to be really important.
The other thing I was thinking about in thinking about this question is like the LibGuide and then having the OER course that was in Canvas kind of as part of the process, I think was also really helpful. Just to have like built-in learning materials right from the beginning. And, you know, it also means that then faculty who are at any point in kind of engaging in OER can jump in, learn the same things from the beginning, and come in with that strong foundation.
So you can see 6 completed that course. So we had a drop of 2 in that time period. And then the next step in terms of actually turning in the course reports, we had 4. So 4 faculty turned in a total of 5 course reports. So we had course reports written for 2 different art history classes, History of Women and Gender in Art, and History of Asian Art and Architecture. We had 1 turned in for a paralegal law office procedures class, a sociology class, which focused on research methods in the social sciences, and 1 psychology class focusing on social psychology. So we did have some pretty unique areas that were covered, which we were really happy about. And for faculty that didn't end up completing, who had originally been approved, the reasons given were basically that they didn't have enough time to dedicate, what they had thought they were going to have set aside. So they just weren't able to find time to complete the project. All course reports were uploaded to Omeka online repository, which is a publishing platform that allows people to create or collaborate on websites or put together digital exhibitions. So we ended up with about half, and we did kind of know that going in, that probably some of the folks that applied were not going to necessarily be able to go through the whole process, just knowing how busy all of our faculty are. So in terms of OER adoptions, did any of our group of 5 transition their course from traditional textbooks to OER? No. So no course transitions to OER immediately resulted from the initial phase of this project. And that was because our faculty found that there were still gaps in terms of quality content that was going to cover, from A to Z, everything that they needed to share in a course. However, as one faculty shared, completing the project was really useful in a number of ways. They incorporated more OER materials into both of the classes that they took a look at. And from our end, one really important piece of the project that Monika mentioned is that, when they signed up to participate, there was no expectation that faculty would have to transition to OER. And I think this was really important because it didn't put that pressure on faculty right from the beginning before they had necessarily dipped their toes into doing the research. So hopefully that put them at ease. And Ellen speaks to this well in our interview of her.
Yeah, and that was a huge part too, is like to go in, because I kind of had an idea that the courses I was looking at might not have enough, and because I had done enough research before to kind of feel that way. So going in feeling like, knowing that I wasn't going to be a failure,
right,
in saying like, no, the gap analysis showed that I still can't adopt something, like that felt really good too, that it wasn't that you have to submit, that you have to have basically compiled or curated a course by the end. So that also was really helpful.
Yeah. Another results from our project really was just general awareness about OER, because faculty had to go through that OER basics course. For some of them, it was pretty new to them. So they talked about how they learned foundational concepts about OER, things like the terminology and some of the main concepts. They also pointed to the resources that were shared out as being great places to find OER. For example, one mentioned Google Advanced Searching. And it was also an online space that they could revisit, during the course outline project, but also beyond. So from the survey done, they had really good feedback about having access to this past the end of the project. Last main result was our gap analysis, and we found that this is really helpful for effective and efficient project planning beyond just this project. So we know that even for what you might think of as being a typical intro courses, the OER that are out there that may be really well written, but are written for a 4-year college audience might not work for instructors at a 2-year college. They might need to be modified for our audiences. We also have niche areas that are underrepresented in the OER landscape as a whole. So for example, one of our original applicants teaches in sign language interpreting. So these are classes that are not commonly taught at larger 4-year institutions. So being able to say for sure, there isn't anything out there that would work for these faculty or these courses was a win in and of itself. And as this quote on the slide highlights, as the quote highlights, these are tangible products that will hopefully inspire other faculty to be efficient with their time and energies and be inspired by those gaps. So one takeaway for us in our project planning is that we want to make our course reports even more easily discoverable, so that other faculty, both in the community college system and beyond, can take a look and see, hey, we're trying to work on this class. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's start off with this course report and just go back and check it. It's been a year. Let's see if there's content for this specific gap that was identified during the project. So that way we're not repeating efforts. We're being a little bit smarter. So let's hear a little bit more from Professor Caldwell about their experiences.
Okay, so I think another layer of support that would be really helpful for this kind of project would be thinking about future funding for projects like mine that had a lot of gaps. So I was thinking about it in terms of, I worked on an ASCCC OERI grant for a different textbook. And one of the things we realized in that was we were technically curating the textbook, but what we realized is that there's great resources, but what we were missing was introduction chapters for each kind of like compilation of articles. We wanted something that would mirror a textbook more, like what students are used to seeing, where, it's like, we called it the hook. So like something to draw you in and make it interesting. And usually it was a story about like, maybe something recent in the news, or, some sort of archaeological find that's interesting, or, something like that. Then an overview of like, these are the things you're learning in this chapter. These are the images we're covering. This is vocabulary you might want to know. We also had a section of like, historiography, like what has been problematic in the past in some of these areas. And then a resourcing, like want to learn more, like these are more links for you. And when I think about like the course reports and these kind of projects, I think that more and more that might be what we need, is just funding to write these kind of introductory chapters. So, if it's a 10 chapter or like, 10 subsections, then having that funding to cover, writing that, I think would be really important, just to keep projects like that then moving towards like the final goalpost of creating something that's adoptable.
Because this was a pilot project, we were really intentional about getting faculty feedback at each step of the process. And some of the main takeaways were faculty really shared that they had a positive experience throughout. One thing they really liked was that we had like specific librarians, either 1 or 2, assigned to each person going through a course reports project that would reach out to them individually by email to check in and assist them if there was anything they needed some additional assistance with or questions that they wanted answered. So that in terms of feedback, that was one thing that we can highlight.
I thought that the Lyle team did a really wonderful job offering support. So I think having OER librarians or an OER team, like whatever makeup that is at a different school, I think having those members that were assigned to us as individual faculty members worked really well. I always felt like I could reach out and ask questions, and they were sometimes like big and they were sometimes really small and, silly. But I always got immediate responses from both people that I was assigned to. So it was really helpful.
So how do course reports fit the big picture? The reality is that our funding sources are not looking for just one instructor who wants to adopt OER. Projects are much larger scale than they were 5 to 10 years ago. So currently we are looking at creating zero textbook cost pathways or ZTC pathways. And these do include general education courses. So we're trying to figure out ways, we need to figure out ways to engage with certain instructors because they may be necessary for the development of any zero textbook cost associate's degrees. So course reports is a scaffolded component of the big picture.
So overall, that's sort of in a nutshell what we did. We'd like to acknowledge first and most importantly Sacramento City College and the original folks that developed the template, or at least as far as we know, they were the ones to first develop the course reports template, specifically Kevin Flash, Rebecca Goodchild, and Antonio Lopez. We also really need to thank the Title V grant administrators that made this project possible. In giving out those $1,000 stipends to faculty that completed reports, especially Dr. Lisa Rodriguez. And of course, we want to thank all of you, the Open Education Conference community and other people that have participated in OER professional development groups, specifically the CCC OER listserv. Thank you for all of the work that you do.